So, without more ado, what I'm going to talk about, one-way vision and other see-through graphics, are always associated with glass, or nearly always. They're either printed directly onto glass or onto a film which is laminated between two sheets of glass by PVB or other adherent, or are applied to glass, a self-adhesive film applied to glass, or hung adjacent to glass. So they affect the visual characteristics, sometimes transforming the visual characteristics of glass. And they also reduce solar heat gain, glare, and UV radiation. One-way vision arguably was started by the Egyptian military, who wove reeds into screens, leaving voids for the soldiers to see through, but the sun on the reeds from the opponent's side blocked the view of the Egyptian soldiers. You will be conversant, all of you, with one-way vision in the form of net curtains. If you have bright daylight outside and a relatively dark inside, it provides privacy, but you can still see out of the room you're in, albeit with a slightly milky cast to the view and the view of the net curtain itself. You'll also be aware of one-way mirrors in the form of lines of mirrors on glass or partially metallized glass. Some of you will also be conversant with fritted glass, typically white ceramic ink fused into glass in a dot pattern or line pattern, which acts just like a net curtain. All these things are light dependent. It depends on a stronger illumination, natural or artificial on one side, to have the one-way effect. My professional involvement in one-way glass as a structural engineer started with being asked to design the structure, nothing to do with the one-way vision, of a so-called all-glass squash court. And a model of my design was on Tomorrow's World in 1977. And Raymond Baxter, a few of you may remember him, was dressed up as a squash player with a racket, and they showed the one-way effect. The problem is it didn't work. They fudged it. And the BBC cameraman said that television cameras flare if they're onto a white material. So if you went to a studio and you had a white shirt on, they'd make you change to a gray or blue shirt. So he said, all you've got to do is put black dots behind the white dots. And the rest of my life, from the early 80s to now, has been trying to do that in different ways and deciding what else can be done with the resultant technology. The rights, so-called, to the idea of an all-glass court went to an American company, and we realized they weren't paying our fees. So my engineering practice, Campbell-Reith Hill, we decided to diversify and develop a court, which is a stupid idea because there's only about 12, 16 players in the world that people want to watch. And but it led to something better, and this is the nature of invention, which I'll touch on. It isn't a linear progress. So this court on the left is what we call the safe screen squash court, and with white on black dots printed in exact registration under a invention that I patented, purely for one-way vision. I was very slow to come to other ideas. So the players can see a white background wall against which to view a conventional black squash ball, but more importantly, see where the wall is so as not to bash it with the racket too hard, and play the game as if it was in a solid court. It was first used for the World Masters Championship in Leicester in 1982. Went on to the British Open in Derby, another championship in Chichester. In other words, it would all go into a 40-foot container, travel anywhere in the world, be erected for a particular tournament, then taken down and put back in its container. I'm showing this particular tournament because it was for the British Closed Championship, but inside Isambard Kingdom Brunel's station in Bristol. So that was a great thrill for me as an engineer. He was my hero. So to have the combination was a wonderful thing for me. It was decided that white squash balls would be better on television for the same feature, that would flare and be seen better. So white squash balls needed coloured walls, and we supplied coloured walls, which is just as easy as white on black walls, or nearly as easy. It's green or blue onto a white layer, onto a black layer, and this was done around the world. This is Grand Central Station in New York. It was for the World Championships in the Royal Albert Hall, etc. Eventually we sold it to the English Squash Rackets Association. It became the English National Squash Court. And even went outdoors in front of the pyramids in Egypt. So ironically, what is supposed to have started in Egypt with the military camouflage, this high-tech version came back. The next invention was to introduce a design superimposed on the dots or lines or perforated material, which was, of course, far more commercially relevant. So this is the Tate Liverpool Art Gallery in the Royal Albert Dock in Liverpool, and for many years they've had what I call Contra Vision as a generic name by the entrance and other windows to promote temporary exhibitions and other messages. And this is a truly one-way vision product. You cannot see the umbrella rack through the window or anything else. This is a clear window. You can see the reception for the gallery, which is totally blocked. I'd just like you to look at conventional graphics here, the word art in particular. So if I can remember how to use this. Moving to this image, which is the same window as this from the inside. So if you see that from outside, you go inside, very few people, if any, relate one image to the other, which is why, although it's all around the world in virtually every high street, it's generally not known. So this is the walkway around the dock, the columns and so on that you see reflected in the top window. But that word art there is in reverse image in conventional graphics. So Contra Vision enables the elimination of reverse images in graphics if that's what you want to do. It means that people can look out of a window instead of being blocked by conventional graphics. Sometimes people put on a series of posters to allow some view around the side of the posters, which many people think is window clutter. So it does a number of things, and some people have said that because, as you'll see, it's used for bus wraps, building wraps, large outdoor advertising, it's led to, or partially led to, the reduction of conventional billboards, which are typically ugly and block the view behind them. I'm not wanting you to read this or understand it. Most people talk about one-way vision. The original dominant patent for this invention, dominant patent means everything else that comes after it falls within that first dominant patent. Figure 32 discloses 36 distinct vision control options. So these numbers relate to visibility of a design, vision through a panel, design on one side, design on both sides, and I can assure you there are 36 distinct vision control options, but the industry, including my company, my son runs it now, he just calls it one-way vision. So that, if you're interested, is the one-way vision like the installation we've seen at Tate Liverpool. This isn't a current news item for the Prince of Wales Award, and we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Tomorrow's World Prince of Wales Award on BBC TV.
There are some tremendously encouraging success stories there. As you can imagine, picking an overall winner from those first 10 years was a daunting task for the panel of judges. What they were looking for was someone who best demonstrated the ideals of the award, someone who had taken an idea all the way from the original concept and built a successful commercial venture. Eventually, they chose two.
And this is the first of those two winners, chosen by the judges as the innovation with the most potential for the 90s. It's the magic now you see it, now you don't window. It was made possible when Roland Hill invented a way to print two tiny dots exactly superimposed on each other. And by making them different colours, one side can appear like a clear tinted window, or both sides could contain different messages like this. Well, over the last few years, the company has identified over 200 new applications and developed a way of allowing two different images to be seen from the same side, depending on whether the background is light or dark. Well, as we've already heard, the idea has now been licensed around the world and is in use by major companies from British Airways to Japanese railways, where the material's recently been fitted to train windows.
This is a truly ingenious invention, and one I think that we're likely to be seeing a great deal of in the future. Very astutely, the inventor Roland Hill realized that he could never fulfill the product's potential by trying to set up manufacturing companies himself, so he has opted to license the idea to large printing companies. How many licensing deals have you set up so far?
Initially, we licensed Europe, North America, and Japan, where they've done a lot of product development work, such as this laminated glass car sunroof. We're now in the process of relicensing Europe, seeking new partners with whom to work, and also Australia, Hong Kong, and elsewhere. We're hoping that the promotion of the invention will be assisted by using the product on the outside of the British Pavilion at Expo 92 in the form of a very large Union Jack.
Well done. Well, maybe I'll be able to see it. You never know.
Right.
Anyway, the judges felt that Roland Hill's invention has the greatest potential for growth in the 90s.
So Prince Charles, as he was then, did see it should be a Union flag. It's a wonder he didn't tell me off for calling it a Union Jack. You have to be on a boat to call it a Union Jack, apparently. So it was a hanging banner, one-way vision banner, hanging behind the glass facade of the British Pavilion, but also a water wall sculpture by the sculptor William Pye. In effect, it was just water running down the glass. These are the people queuing to get into the pavilion, and it was visible throughout the site. And Dee and I were invited to the British Day and met Prince Charles and Diana, and so it was a nice ego trip. So we managed to license two very big companies initially, Avery, now Avery Dennison, for North America and what was Western Europe, and a very large company in Japan called Toppan Printing Company. These are some of the early applications. Now, this, believe it or not, that poster is the first bus advertising on a window with one-way graphics. Tobacco advertisement, which dates it, but it proved the idea, which then led to much more dominant advertisements. This is the first rollout of a retail window advertisement, and the view through the panel shows one of our Japanese licensee who was visiting with colleagues, and as you can see, you can read the newspaper, you can see the name of the shop opposite. So this was a architectural sign. These are all late 80s, and the Jaguar logo is visible from outside, even at night with outside illumination, but a completely clear view from inside. I was much later asked to meet with the designers of the Jaguar super sports car, and I arrived, and these half a dozen brilliant designers who could draw any part of the car by hand hadn't a clue that they walked past Contra Vision every day. They didn't recognize the fact that what they saw is the name of, this is the design headquarters for Jaguar. You could see it clearly, and they didn't see it on the way out. So if these very top designers can't recognize it, it's not a surprise that it's been around for 40 years, and if people ask me what I do, they haven't got a clue. Most people, if they think about it, realize that the people inside a bus wrap can see out. But again, it's some people say it's the world's best secret, best kept secret. So this is a close-up photograph of, I've left some samples if you want to pass them backwards and forwards on each row. And the eye sample that you have there, small sample, this is a large image of the exact registration printing against a white background, against a grey background. So on each of these tiny dots, there are in fact 7 layers of ink printed in exact registration. Black, 2 layers of white to give a good opaque background to CMYK printing. So when I first introduced this to trade shows in America and Europe, that little sample was typically passed around, and people saying, wow, look at this, Fred, or whatever, because they hadn't seen it at this size. And then when they asked how big it can be done, I said as big as you like, because the process isn't just printing, it has an additional stage or stages to enable it to come out with exact registration. So if I can get one of those samples. I think you can see the eye design there, and with illumination it's increased. If I put the illumination on my shirt, it disappears. Can you see that? Hopefully it's disappeared with my blue shirt. That can be an advantage. In America, it was liked by 7-Eleven and other convenience stores, where they have a lot of gun raids, and you could continue to see into the store at night. However, a lot of people want 24-hour visibility, and that is not easy. I've lost my pointer now. There it is. There is a compromise, but that was the mother, if you like, of the second dominant invention. Instead of an opaque pattern of dots or lines, this has a translucent pattern which enables the piece to be illuminated from behind. We got this patent in about 20 countries, like the first dominant patent, because if you're licensing an invention, it only is valid where you've got a patent. Where you've got a patent. And nobody was taking up this invention. And I was in a taxi going through London one night and shouted to the driver, "Stop, that's backlight." And he thought I was mad, but he stopped the cab, and I went out to investigate and took this photograph. So this was the first, it was actually an infringement, the first example, and we licensed the company, and it then became used quite often. Okay, so I'm going to show a lot of photographs of bus wraps and things. I'm going to go very quickly because time is limited, but also it's to give you an overall impression of different things that Contra Vision can do and how broadly it's distributed around the world. I don't think there's any high street in any country in the world where this doesn't exist, and typically there'd be 6 or more examples of buses going past, taxis going past, on retail windows, etc. This is the first bus wrap in the world, 1991 in New Zealand, and the idea spread to, spread to Australia, and a lot of bus wraps have been produced there, still are. Went to South Africa, and I'd just like to highlight that before Contra Vision, graphics were limited to solid body, typically in the mid-height of a double-decker or the bottom level in a double-decker or single-decker. The potential with going over the windows as well means that the impact of the outdoor advertisement, if it's a logo or something like that, say this circular logo is 16 times the size of the circle you could have in one of the solid bands. So that's much higher impact, and of course with outdoor advertising, impact is what is wanted. Bus advertising is good anyway. It's dynamic, the buses are moving, and that attracts the eye. I think we used to be wary of predators in the past. There are a lot of opportunities to view, another phrase in the outdoor advertising business, because they're typically going around urban areas. This is another one, Table Mountain behind in South Africa. We had a particularly good licensee there, exclusive licensee for South Africa, and eventually back to London. So this is in the Benelux, and there was a lot of humor associated with a lot of the designs, some very good graphic designs. So this is one of my favorites, where the advertising a zoo, and the snake is crushing the bus. This is in Portugal, so the tram is made to look a little bit like a Kit Kat bar. This is another favorite of mine, a tram filled with M&M chocolates. Now this is in Russia. I went to the Soviet Union in 1965 on an engineering visit, and there was not one outdoor advertisement in Leningrad as it was there, or Moscow. So to see the invention on the windows of trams there was, again, something notable. In America, they eventually took the idea too, and it is now the biggest market. And This is a player called Charles Barkley, known as Sir Charles Barkley, one of the players in the Phoenix Suns. And believe it or not, this is done by an airbrush artist. All the buses were done by airbrush artists initially, or screen printing. So it's cheaper to do it with an airbrush artist for a one-off. For a larger numbers, screen printing was the economic version. US mail, it attracted very well-known, high-quality advertisers. This bus here is the first digitally printed bus wrap. The first outdoor or large format digital printing was a 3M process called Scotch print, which was a thermal transfer process. And it was quite difficult to do with our exact registration technology. That was one of the things to cause the introduction of perforated material. And this is a bus wrap with perforated material on the bottom. This is a close-up of perforated material where, of course, the exact registration is guaranteed because the four-color process design is on a white on black vinyl self-adhesive material, black looking through the other side, and of course the ink can't stick in the holes. About this time we were suffering a great deal of infringement, and indeed one of our licensees was not paying our royalties, and eventually to defend the patent, you lose the patent if you don't defend it, we had to start litigation. And I was a member of the UK government's Intellectual Property Advisory Committee, chairman of the Enforcement Subcommittee, and I knew how difficult it was to enforce patents, particularly where a product can be printed relatively economically at low cost. So this was a trade show we exhibited at, the major trade show in its field in New Orleans in 2000. And as well as our normal exhibit panels showing different types of Contra Vision, different vision control options, we had the floor printed like tablets of stone with the major claims that were being infringed. And it was a bit of a dramatic statement. We had some very keen people reading the claims, walking backwards, and then sadly walking off the back of the floor. We didn't have any serious injuries, but sorry. Oh yes, it's won best in show, and we as Contra Vision try to enjoy the business as well as be proud of it. And I think, Dee, we saw the last tour of Tina Turner, Joe Cocker, the Dixie Chicks. Dee is our social secretary as well as everything else. So it had an effect, and particularly with one gentleman who was the CEO of Avery Dennison, who had become relicensed. They actually gave up their license in 1990, and we had to form our own new company in America, Contra Vision North America, and Contra Vision Supplies Limited for the rest of the world, called Dick Scarborough. And several years after he'd been round the booth, his middle management were not paying royalties. They're also infringing another patent. We have over 20 patents in this field of see-through graphics. And I wrote to him and said, "Dear Mr. Scarborough, you may not remember walking around the booth." Anyway, I got a reply by return, "Roland, come over and we'll settle." And we got far more money than we would have had negotiating with the middle managers. Companies like that typically find it hard to believe that their bottom line should be affected by a little firm in Bramall, Stockport. It's quite a challenge. 3M have always been magnificent, and the rest is varied. Okay, another of my interests is jazz, and I'd seen Miles Davis at the Lincoln Center, so it was great to see him on a bus back. London was very slow to adopt bus wraps. People like their traditional red buses, or so it was thought. Eventually it was tried, and they became very popular, and even the top clothes and other brands that had to not only have windows and solid, but numbers, petrol caps, lights. The human brain can see the overall image that's desired in spite of all those interruptions. I like this one. Is this Spider-Man? I've never seen Spider-Man or Batman, but I think it's Spider-Man who saves the world. And at this time, we were suffering an existential threat in the form of Chinese infringers. I went to a trade show in Guangzhou, and there were 50 exactly swatches I took back incorporating our patented technology. And they were prepared to sell into our patented countries. At trade shows, they turn up en masse, sponsored by the Chinese government. They pretend that they aren't aware of the patents, which they are, and they pretend that they're not selling. Well, in patent law, if you're showing something, you're selling it. So this existential threat, at that time, we were having our perforated material made in America, and we just couldn't compete. I mean, you're talking about 4 times the cost of it being made, and this is the reason why American companies go abroad, and particularly to China, for products, and why Mr. Trump is rampaging against that. I went to see a friend far more successful than me in Vancouver, and he said, Rolly, you've got to join them. You've got to go and get a manufacturer in China, which is what we did. And we still bring in material from China. It's the biggest range of perforated graphic films, and we import directly from China into America, which meant we've had fluctuating penalties from Mr. Trump, varying from 15% to 51%. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. Single deckers can be dynamic as well. This is the velodrome for the 2012 Olympics, where there was a lot of Contra Vision. And this is Australia, New Zealand getting more up to date. Taxi advertising, so-called car wraps, van wraps, trains, Sydney, UK, Disney, overhead railways. Wherever there's an overhead railway, there's typically Contra Vision on the windows. These are 2 favorite pictures of mine. You'll know that's Liverpool. That is on the Thames. It's a boat that's there now, which acts as a bar, entertainment place. This was commemoration for World War I, the Dazzle ships, a brilliant invention by an artist, and the idea was to paint ships with designs that confused the U-boat gunners and the, what's it called when you fire something under the sea? Anyway, so these designs were meant to give the impression the boat was going in a different direction. The bow was painted as if it was halfway down the side, and apparently that had a real effect. Obviously not 100%, but reduced the casualties of the ships crossing the Atlantic. Over 2,000 ships were painted in Canning Dock in Liverpool, which is where the slave trade was mainly carried out from, the Liverpool aspect of the slave trade. So this design, this bright design, is by Sir Peter Blake, who did the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, which he told me he was only paid £60 for, and he's never had a penny more because he didn't keep the copyright. So the windows are Contra Vision XR, we call the exact registration printed product. And the one below is a German artist, which is a nice irony, Thomas Rehberger. Yes, and that was one of our perforated materials. So that was close to my heart. This is has just won a design award. It's a tender going from a mothership to shore. And on the roof, there are 3 Contra Vision roof lights, which reflect the solar heat glare UV, but allow people inside to see the mothership or the buildings in the harbour. We did similar panels, prototypes, for Larry Ellison of Oracle, and for his largest yacht in the world, but he didn't actually use them. But under the contract, he owed us £100,000 and still does. But I was told, you do not sue Larry Ellison. You'd be broke in a short time. So, building wraps. This is Edgar Davids, the Dutch footballer who was known to be very aggressive. But this was the idea of him running through a multi-story building. That would be the ultimate aggression. That used 3M licensed perforated window film. This is close to my heart too. It's a new building in the Rockefeller Center, 745 7th Avenue. And it was then owned by the Lehman Brothers that went bust. And the picture of the world was changed to a graphic for Barclays Bank, who took it over. Now in Times Square, contrary to most planning locations, where the planners are trying to reduce graphics and advertisements, in Times Square zoning you have to have a proportion of these things in order for it to be occupied. This is the largest graphic in Times Square. Typically used for sports events. So this is the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand. And Manchester United, again, forgive me all these personal references, but I designed quite a lot of this structure of Old Trafford a long time ago, early 1990s. And there's probably been, 50 different designs on the glazed facade. This again, another favorite. So this is Stratford Station, the closest station to the Olympic site. Behind, that's Zaha Hadid's aquatic center. And the whole facade here and here was covered in our backlight product because they wanted 24-hour visibility. So that's the same group of buildings at night, and where you see Anish Kapoor's tower a bit better at night when it's illuminated. And you still get daylight in and a view out. With this product, you do get some ghosted images, but that's the penalty you pay for having 24-hour vision. In 1993, my eldest son Roger was he at school then, or an early student? Produced a proposal for advertising on BT payphones. He's now been running the company for the last 11 years. It took 7 years for the authorities to accept it, which depended on the one-way vision, people inside being able to see out. Sadly, since then, the French outdoor advertising company JCDecaux have bulldozed through using solid graphics which of course I don't like, but I don't think the quality is as good as it was with Contra Vision. This is a close-up of the product that is used, which is a different technology, one of the 8 methods of producing the product in the original dominant patent, which we call the overlap registration system. There are black edges which hide overlapping translucent CMYK designs, and it's not as good as exact registration, but it's value for money for short-term advertisements like those. Bus shelters. One of the benefits of bus shelters is that this looks very one-way. You can actually see the design or see through the design as the brain selects. It's very easy for the brain to concentrate on one of those 2 images. Retail, spectacular ones like this. This is a couturier in Paris, and the design is one of the fabric designs, proprietary fabric designs. This is in fact an art gallery in London, Vitrine Art Gallery. Gale's kitchen, which is growing very rapidly, they use it when they're fitting out. So they get a big advertisement for the forthcoming bakery. But this lady with the guitar, that same window is this window viewing out. So the tradesmen inside fitting out get the daylight in and get the view out. So this one is a very indistinguished, not very distinguished standard product. Estate agents aren't very inventive, and real estate people, they use it everywhere. You'll have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of these on your travel. The reason I've got this in is that this is our office that we rent space in. We had no idea this was coming, so the invention has come from where it was invented back to be put on, which I rather like. Vehicle OEM, it's been on virtually every excuse me, construction vehicle manufacturer: Caterpillar, Volvo, Komatsu, Kawasaki, etc. So here the brand is advertised at the highest point on the vehicle, but the driver has a visor that reduces the solar glare, and particularly valuable when he's got his bucket or whatever in the air, so he can see it being rocked and so on. One-way material can be used for projecting designs onto, and our patent covers this as well. This is the Sage building in Gateshead, and the opening of an anniversary of the Northern Run, the Great North Run. So the Glaze building is covered with our material that still allows it to work as glass inside, but enables this dramatic show. I'm only showing one still from it. This is a half-hour video on Media Centre in Salford, another commemoration for World War I. So these are again just a few stills of that, and the fireworks and noise representing life in a trench. This is privacy glazing to police stations in Japan. You probably recognize this building. It was on a lot, on the TV a lot during Brexit. It's the headquarters of the European Commission. It is a building with 3 curved sides, and these are completely covered with licensed louvers, which are movable. So when they're down like that, it's a conventional use, providing privacy, reduction of solar heat gain, glare, and UV radiation. This is where they extend outside, so you can see through the louvres. These louvres are maneuverable automatically. There's a weather station on top. So they can either be like that, they can be horizontal to act as brise soleil, or they can be angled inwards to reflect daylight further into the building to improve the daylight factor. So I've got a sample here you can look at afterwards of that laminated glass, which you should see as white here, and I see through there. This is the original Museum of America, and all the windows have that material on to, again, cut down UV degradation of the artifacts inside. It's now part of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. No doubt soon to be renamed the Trump Museum. You've gathered by now I'm a bit biased. This is a Norman Foster building. This is gold on white on black, one-way vision laminated glass. And this is in London. If you come out of Victoria Station and walk straight ahead, you come across this Nova development. Now, this isn't laminated glass. We couldn't print with exact registration with ceramic ink for years and years. Eventually, I thought of 3 ways of doing it, and this is one of them. And it's licensed to a number of companies, but this glass was produced by Saint-Gobain. And so on each dot on on those panels, there's a black layer, a white layer, and a red layer, which gives that effect. So that is a project that it's difficult for me to say I'm proud of, because I've had nothing to do with it other than the patented invention. But it's sad because Saint-Gobain are one of the many multinational companies, and probably over 100 smaller companies that have been licensed with my inventions. Not one British company has asked for a license. So if there's time for discussion, we might discuss why that happens in Britain. I've recently, relatively recently, invented a way of making tea, and the same thing is happening. We cannot interest any British company. In fact, they regard it as a threat to their teapots. So I know from when I was on the Intellectual Property Advisory Committee, we think we're an inventive company, and we are, albeit other companies like China and Japan apply for far more patents. I think we are reasonably inventive, but we are very bad at converting inventions into commercially viable businesses. And Contra Vision is all around the world, but the amount UK PLC has got is a tiny fraction of what it would have got had we had UK manufacture, UK licensees. Now, I've spent a lot of my life in America going around licensees from 3M in St. Paul. We've had an office based in Atlanta since 1990. The first US president, Benjamin Franklin, was an inventor. Abraham Lincoln is the only US president to actually own a patent. But how many British prime ministers, if you like, the equivalent, have invented anything? Barack Obama, in his inaugural address mentioned patentable inventions twice. If you watch American TV, you regularly get an advertisement, get your invention pack from the US Patent and Trademark Office. The whole country is patentable innovation aware. Nobody does anything here amongst our politicians of all sorts. So the last politician who's actually contributed to me, in my terms, to innovation, encouraging it. Harold Wilson invented the Queen's Award, or rather thought of the Queen's Award, funded it, and it has gone onwards to this day. Now it's the King's Award. And we're lucky to have won 3 Queen's Awards. The royal family, and I have no strong feelings either way, but I found the ones that I've met to be fantastic. And they have done more to promote design and innovation of things that people want to buy. If you want to have a balance of trade, you've got to design new things that people abroad want to buy, or in Peter's case, create art that people want to buy. It's got to be creation. Now, the Duke of Edinburgh was a fantastic advocate of design and supporting the Design Council. He was on Radio 4 with the most magnificent prepared item on how engineers, designers were responsible for every social improvement. I'm not sure that's quite true, but that was what he said. In other words, he was promoting innovation. The Queen, with her Queen's Awards, they opened up Buckingham Palace, and members of Contra Vision have been 3 times for there. Our Prince of Wales now sponsors the, my memory's not, it's called the Earthshot prize. It is just amazing that they've done more to encourage innovation than our politicians. And until that changes, we will be going backwards. Sorry for the bringing my personal views into it, but I hope you've got something from that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, thank you very much, Roland. Do we have some questions?
I'd like to know how long it takes from getting a design that you think and how to actually producing your bus rack. I mean, is it a long process, or is it all done electronically and it's quite a quick process?
It used to be a longer process than it is now. And I've seen artists on scaffolding painting the side of a double-decker bus. With digital printing, it's very fast, it's very easy to have a patchwork of panels. The actual process of application has to be fast to keep the bus on the road as much as possible. So probably they can take as much time in design as you like, but the actual process of printing and application can be very short, a matter of a few days. Yeah. He's the chairman.
Sorry, that's actually, I'm asking about buses because I used to work for Experian, now Global, and they do all these jobs around buses. So you mentioned that there's no manufacturing in the UK, or how do they actually, because I never was...
Okay, you see it all around the UK. In our little village of Bramall, I counted there's 19 pieces at the moment, including the one that's been put on our office. So those are typically printed in the UK, but the technology that creates the one-way vision is made elsewhere.
So they would have a piece of kit on site.
Yeah, we've tried again and again, but we just cannot get a UK manufacturer. We've tried recently, because of the Trump tariffs, if you're paying 51% more than you need to, it's actually our American company that pays the tariffs, but it's a wholly owned subsidiary of Contra Vision Ltd, so we are in fact paying. We've gone to South Korea, we've gone to various other places to try and bypass this crazy tariff system. I forgot to demonstrate one or two of these pieces here, if Master will allow me. So you've seen one-way vision. That shows that the graphics can always be the right way around. I haven't mentioned covert observation. It's used by the military, it's used by the police, it's used by Homeland Security as a camera hide. So Homeland Security told a licensee that they can see a registration plate there in 2 miles away through Contra Vision, with, you know, obviously a fantastic camera. So one of the pieces that's being passed around, this is our best perforated material. It won a Queen's Award, so we're very proud of that one. I'm sorry.
It's probably a silly question. You know the CCTV, is that, and when you say they can see registration plate from 2 miles away?
Sorry, my hearing's not great.
Sorry, you know the piece.
Hearing's not great.
Sorry, you know the piece that you showed, the CCTV.
Yes, yeah.
Is that what they use for radar?
No, it has been, there were projects, particularly in Australia, weren't there, for camouflage on Jeeps. There was an incredible number of Jeeps supposedly being fitted the windscreen with a special material too that was supposed to be smart to divert radar. A perforated material doesn't have a perfect hole. The punches distort the plastic. So I suppose the idea is that any rays coming in get spread. And we have a product too, what's it called, for in the States, Florida and so on, they have a problem with sun reflecting onto artificial grass and melting it, or melting upholstery in cars. So again, a perforated material spreads that incoming ray in all directions. So there's lots of applications which I never thought of. We even had one guy ring up and he was studying ducks diving in a university, wasn't he? Yeah. And he wanted to use Contra Vision. So the ducks... Oh yes, it's used in hospitals. So for pediatric assessments, so students can see the children who aren't aware. So this is a backlight that, if it works, should demonstrate the illumination from behind. Hopefully you can see that stronger where the light is than where it isn't. You can't do that with this product, which is opaque. And finally, this is a full design on each side, but you can still see through it. So say in an office conference room, you can have a design that prevents you seeing through to a degree. You can see there are people in the conference room, but you can't recognize the faces. So this is all about vision control, graded vision that has yet to be fully used in the future. We're still innovating. We're currently sponsoring research at Manchester University into organic photovoltaic cells, the idea being that they would be incorporated into Contra Vision, so providing privacy but also generating electricity. Sorry, I've gone on longer than I should.
James first.
Sorry, James.
The translucent stuff that you can
Yeah.
backlight and see. How does that, I don't quite see, I understand the black, when you have white, the picture on the front and the black on the back, I understand what, but how do you get away with the light going through the dots and you still not seeing clearly from inside?
The view is affected, just like a net curtain. Your view out's affected by the white net curtain. And you can get a ghost image visible on the inside. It depends on how bright the outside is. So in that Stratford Station example, you're basically looking onto the sky and distant buildings. So the view out is very good, or relatively good. It'll never be as good as seeing through black. Basically, it's about reflection of the surface, and whether it's Egyptian soldiers' reeds or whether it's four-color process digital printing, whether you see it or see through it depends on that reflectivity.
So at night, it looks pretty solid.
Yes, yeah, with internal illumination.
David first, and then.
How expensive is it? You know, if I'm Glaziers Hall and I wanted these windows printed with the Glaziers.
I can see Dee smiling because she knows that I'm the inventor and I am not the commercial guy. The fact that it's everywhere, and if you were to say walk down Victoria Street, I walked down there once. There's just loads of it there, means that it can't be that expensive. So it's more expensive than solid paper or solid vinyl, but not that much more. You're actually, if you think about it, using less ink if it's a overlap registration system, and very similarly priced film. So laminated glass is obviously relatively expensive, and probably it's mainly been used on prestige projects. But the perforated film is very economic.
Right, Dee and then Barbara, and then we will. Oh, thank you.
Well, I had two questions, but one of them you've just answered, because I was going to ask a bit more about the laminated side, where you said, where you started your talk and said that they were actually could be between 2 or even 3.
Yes. So typically our licensees are printing a polyester film that's been heat treated so that when it goes through the lamination process, it is stable or relatively stable. And it's typically laminated with 2 adhering layers of polyvinyl butyryl, PVB, to 2 sheets of glass. It can be built in to a much bigger assembly for bulletproof glass, which would have polycarbonate and other layers, but the simplest form is 5 parts, 2 sheets of glass, 2 PVB, and the film.
My second question was actually, how is it applied on a bus rack?
Okay.
It's fascinating because we see them all the time.
Yes,
now.
yeah.
But
it's self-adhesive or pressure-sensitive adhesive. So you have a liner, you have the pressure-sensitive adhesive layer, and the perforated white on black vinyl. For whatever reason, it's typically over-laminated as well with a clear non-perforated film. So yeah, that's self-adhesive perforated material is by far the most common construction now.
And how do they get it off?
Comes as one of the requirements, because it's short time, it has to come off easily. So so-called replaceable pressure-sensitive materials has to come off cleanly within a 1-year period. They're typically only on a bus for a month or 2 months.
And how is it with our eco to it being recyclable? Is it recyclable, or is
it's a major problem.
How do you get rid of it?
Yeah, and we're working on it, or other people are working on it on our behalf, But the problem is, because it's different materials combined, you can recycle or process one way or another a single material, but it's very difficult to process two materials together. Basically, you have to separate them, and the whole idea of a pressure-sensitive material is it sticks to the parent vinyl and doesn't come off very easily. So it's the same for us. We've tried to innovate in this, but there are these giants, 3M, who sell 1 million times as much vinyl as we do. Can't do it at the moment. We have a paper product that we're developing, but when I say a paper product, paper typically has additives if you're going to print it, and it to have some resistance to water.
Maybe back to your reeds.
Back to the reeds, yes. Spray painting reeds. Yeah, that would be a nice end product.
Dee's covered most of my questions, but just one bit of it. When you've got the vinyl sheet going out, is it going in rolls?
It goes in rolls, yeah. And most printers are geared to accepting a roll. Some are flatbed machines that take sheet materials. So if it's being printed onto acrylic or polycarbonate PVC sheets, then it has to be done on a flatbed machine. But mainly it's in roll form, and we do master rolls of 250 meters length right down to 10 meters and of different widths. It's the number of so-called SKUs we have is incredible.